The third section in the Atlas is the Mandibular Movements section. So let's go in and take a look at that. It's very comprehensive, and it's divided up into two sections, as I will show you. Let's start with the types of mandibular movements. These are illustrated both as videos and as animated models. So for instance, opening and closing movement, you can see this on a live patient video. Gives you the pathways of a normal opening and closing movement, or you can see it as an animation. And these animations can be stopped and started and manually gone through. Protrusive and retrusive movements, I won't go show you those right now, but you can see for every page there's all types of illustrations of the movements. This happens to be a left lateral movement. And again, you've got the animations to illustrate the same type of movement. Now, once we've gone through these movements generally in a summary sort of way, you end up with a section that's very highly detailed. So for instance, this is the summary of the chewing cycle with all of the adherent media to it. And now we can get into detailed information. And what happens there is you get into basically everything that's been written about this. So you've got the summary sections for general study. If you're in a graduate program or you're really, really interested in this, you've got the very, very detailed information with all of the bibliography information included with it. So each one of these sections includes a detailed reference information section that goes into great detail about that particular section. There's also a reference list of all of the bibliography information that this is based on. Mastication and masticatory cycle, chewing cycle. This is another set of videos and animations and figures. So just to give you a point, we have a figure, simple 2D drawing, a video illustrating the point, and then an animation illustrating the same point, showing the pathway that's taken by the teeth during that particular movement. Okay, let's go into our table of contents, mandibular movement, and look at swallowing for a moment. Again, this is divided up into a general section that shows an overview with videos showing swallowing from the external and x-rays showing what it looks like in real life. And then there are figure illustrations that are two-dimensional illustrations. And these can be used in lectures if you're preparing that. Detailed reference information, again, giving you significant depth in the information that we're looking at. Let's go back to the table of contents again. Mandibular movements, respiration. This is a relatively short section, but it includes the role of the teeth in the upper airway in respiration. We can go down through this. That leads us into speech and speech production. This is fairly simple on the surface, but it gets quite detailed if you look at the detailed reference information and how the different sounds are developed. And these have audio over.
Jane enjoyed the fudge.
Okay, this is quite useful from a speech pathology standpoint. So speech production, classification of sounds, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a whole section on where the sounds are produced, how they're produced, and this is profoundly deep information. Let's go to the table of contents again. We'll go to the border movements and envelope of movement. This is the general border movements of the mandible as described in Passalt's envelope of movement. This animation shows you that. we have a figure here that in fact is basalt's envelope of movement. I find it quite beautiful, actually. You can rotate this around, look at it from different views. There's a 3D version of basalt's envelope of movement, and you can rotate this around and see how it looks. Again, we have animations and videos of the different movements to illustrate how this works. Side view. Comparison of a side view, front view, and a view through the top of the skull. Notice the way the condyles move in relationship to the mandible moving. Let's go back now and look at the condylar movements. Again, we go to descriptors of the condyle. We have a general animation of the condylar movements from multiple different views and showing how the mandible translates during the chewing cycle. We've overlaid basalt's envelope of movement on that. And you can stop this and start it and control it manually if you'd like. So this is a very, very good teaching aid as well as a good study guide. We have all kinds of different illustrations of what the joint looks like, histology, etc. This is an animation that we made of the joint. This is about 6 months worth of work with Charles McNeil to show what the joint looks like during function. Again, this can be controlled by the user. Our basalt's envelope of movement again. There's a lot of media in here that's very rich to show you how all of this works. Let's go back down now to the mandibular movements, and we'll go to the rest position and the location of the rest position in reference to the basalt's envelope of movement and the distances between the teeth at points. So for instance, the mandible will go to a certain rest position after it's been used. Head position, etc., condylar movement during rest position, etc., etc. Again, there are detailed reference information that goes along with all of this, but we're not going to go into that right now. So let's go back to the table of contents and look at the mandibular movements, and that's the last part of the mandibular movements. The next section is tooth form and occlusion relationships.